Mr. Kramer, one of the things that some pilot project in California is looking at is on-site new technology that might clean the runoff, recycle the runoff right from the farms. Is there anything being looked at or touted or at least considered as part of the assistance to the farmers?
The one thing that we're doing that it's not actually cleaning, but it's what we call edge of field monitoring, which we now do within NRCS. That allows on the farm so they can monitor the nutrient loads that are coming off that farm. We have looked at things such as bioreactors and things of that nature that in the ground, subsurface to clean it. But what you're referring to, I'm not aware of, but it's a possibility. We could look at those different methods and processes. And what NRCS would typically do is take a look at something like that. If it provides merit, we can try it on a pilot basis.
Well, I'll check out, but it was supposed to be a pilot in Bakersfield by the Costner group that did the Breeze Petroleum spill.
Okay.
So that might bring some change. In the algae bloom, isn't probably the temperature also responsible for the creation of a lot more of the algae? Yes.
The water temperature, air temperature. I think we avoided it a lot this year because we didn't have as many duration of hot, humid days, and we had some winds that kind of stirred the lake a little bit. At least that's from the reports from NOAA that we received on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah. And I noticed, I'm sorry, but my time is running, and I want to be sure that I take in all the questions that I have in mind. But in the runoff, going back to the runoff, the fact that there are more effective ways of partners working together to combat the runoff, what else is being done to be able to help farmers and the ability to restrict the amount of runoff into the streams and rivers?
Well, I think, one of the big things that we do is it's not just controlling the runoff, it's what's being applied.
Okay.
Only apply what you absolutely need through our nutrient management standard specification, which is a very widely used practice throughout the basin and throughout the Great Lakes. So what's being delivered on the field should be controlled first, and a lot of producers are doing that.
Of course, there's a lot of great results, but some are saying that the GLRI has gone after the low-hanging fruit, and what remains is going to be a bigger challenge. Can you explain?
I believe maybe it's kind of what I'd referred to before. We have developed there's a conservation effects assessment project that we've done, and our scientists have estimated that if for Western Lake Erie Basin alone, if we treated every single ag farm, we would still only reduce the nutrients by 40%. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that maybe what that statement is referring to is that even in doing everything that we could do, there's still so many other factors involved that we're not going to be able to get.
Do you have an idea of how many farms are voluntary partners? Is it a percentage? Because you mentioned it was voluntary.
Yeah. I don't have that with me, but we could provide that.
It would be nice to know.
The number of the producers in the Great Lakes that are actually that are working with us. Yes, we could provide that information.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Kurleski, your testimony notes that Action 2 incorporates fresh approaches. Can you describe the science-based adaptive management framework you plan to use, and when do you feel it's going to be implemented?
Yes, Ranking Member. The adaptive management approach, I think adaptive management is a fancy way of saying learn as we go. Learn from your mistakes. Learn from what works. Learn from what doesn't work.
But who looks at those?
What's that?
Who determines what works and what isn't working?
The agencies implementing the projects.
Okay.
So under the action plan, the way this should work is when projects are implemented, the agencies implementing them should look at project results and look at project impacts and look at what worked. If you did a project, if we tried something as a pilot project and it didn't work, we have to remember that, and we have to say, yeah, that didn't work. Don't do that.
But what is turnaround time? Don't forget, government works very slowly.
Well, we do adaptive management really over the course of 2 different cycles. So we do an action plan every 5 years. So one of the things that we do is when we're drafting a new action plan, as we did in the second action plan, we looked about what worked, what didn't work, what kind of targets did we have in the first action plan that were not realistic, that we didn't have the technology or we didn't have good measurements, and come up with a better action plan.
Okay.
But I think more importantly, adaptive management is also looked at on an annual level when we're actually doing project selection, because the agencies essentially get together and look at the potential universe of projects that could be done and say, okay, given what we know, where should we prioritize?
Do you share that information with other areas that might have similar problems?
For example,
That
geographic areas?
Yes.
Like the Chesapeake? Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Because that would save some time and some people having to reinvent the wheel. The other question I have recently, actually yesterday, there was a news release in regard to Line 5, the pipeline. And the question, of course, comes up about, according to the University of Michigan, it's the worst possible location for an oil spill. This is crude coming out of Canada, or transfer being out of Canada. You're aware of that, I'm sure. And some of the challenges that they may face in winter if there is a spill. And apparently there was a winter spill test that was very challenging. Is there a way to be able to understand, because I understand Senator Stabenow and Congressman Peters have a bill to ban crude oil shipments through that region?
Well, Ranking Member, if I can tell you about EPA's role, maybe that will help clarify.
Okay.
So in Region 5, where we are, our response office, our Superfund program, is deeply involved in planning contingency work, at trying to anticipate what could go wrong, in working with PHMSA, states, tribal nations, to, again, make sure
I know, but that was in summer. The program was looking at the transportation in summer. But what about winter? Because there is a challenge there.
Ranking Member, I confess I'm not that familiar with the challenge that occurred in the winter exercise, so that's something we can follow up on. But I do know that EPA and the Coast Guard would be the first line of response in the event of any.
Apparently there's another test being held early next year. I'd like to be able to know what the results of that, because of the protection for that area.
Yes, Ranking Member, we will be sure to note that.
Thank you. And then, of course, there is the past 5 years, the program has improved the quality in the region and addressed a lot of the environmental problems. How is GLRI prepared to produce the same result in the next 5?
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question?
How is the GLRI prepared to produce the same results in the next 5 years as it has in the past 5 years, considering the scope of the problems?
Ranking Member, I think we actually hope to do better in the next 5 years.
Based on your experience?
Based on the adaptive management approach and learning from what we learned the first 5 years. Also the fact, as I mentioned earlier, the agencies, I think, are coordinating much better on identifying priorities. So it's not just an agency by agency, let us do what we want. I think that's going to achieve better and greater results. So I think we've learned a lot and we're working together more closely.
Thank you. And now I'll refer back to my chairman. I have one more question, Mr. Gomez. I'll hold.
Mr. Ribble.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. I appreciate the work that you're all working on.